with multifold gratitude, submitted at the lotus feet of the philanthropist Sadayappa, without whose benevolence Kamba Ramayana itself would not have been possible, I begin this discourse. My humble salutations are to Kamba and to Karaikudi Kamban Kalagam that had made this discourse possible. Special thanks to respected Mr. Painiyappan, the great Kambar scholar, who has extended the invitation to me to present this program, not only for the past and present generations, but also for the upcoming generations. Kamba Ramayana could be a very powerful life skills guide and an ethical guide, in fact. I've always felt that the need to take Kamba Ramayana to the future generations is not only because of its literary excellence, spiritual relevance, or the richness of Tamil, but also because of the multivarious skills it imparts to the readers. Kishkinda Canto, or as it is called in Tamil, Kishkinda Kandam, is a very good example of this. The inimitable Kamba has divided his epic poetry Ramavataram, which we have later called as Kamba Ramayana, into 6 cantos. Bala Canto is about the childhood stage in Rama's life. Bala, of course, means young in Tamil. Ayodhya, Aranya, and Kishkinta cantos are named after the places where the occurrences in these cantos take place. And when it comes to Yuddha Canto, it actually is named after the action that takes place in this canto. Though Valmiki's original Ramayana consisted of 24,000 verses, Kamba's adaptation, or rather reinvention of Ramayana, consists of approximately half the number of verses despite following the same canto division. While Valmiki subdivides his cantos into sargas, Kamba subdivides them into what he calls as padalam in Tamil. Valmiki has chiseled his Rama and Lakshmana or Sita in human form as early as 1st century. But you know what Kamba has done? He has taken out this. He has reinvented his Rama, Lakshmana and Sita. He has cast them in divine form. And now the world cannot think of them as anything less than divine. This is the power of Kamba. Kishkinda Canto functions as a catalyst for the movement of storyline in Ramayana. That is the speciality of Kishkinda Canto. Rama and Lakshmana are portrayed in their distress, but their highly cultured conduct, despite their distress, and their composure amidst pandemonium are real takeaways for all the generations from this canto. After losing Sita by deceit to the demon or Rakshasa king Ravana, and not knowing where she has been placed, Rama and Lakshmana meet Kabandhan, who provides guidance to them to meet Sabari, who in turn clearly directs them to meet Sugriva to fulfill their task. They have been guided towards Sugriva as that would be very essential for them to formulate their further strategies to get back the embodiment of chastity, Mother Sita. Kishkinda Canto unveils at Pampa River, where Rama experiences pangs of separation from Sita, and the feelings of separations are intensified due to the beautiful scenery that surrounds them. Birds retire to their nests. Parrots stop prattling. Peacocks stopped their proud pigeon. Leaves started to go on a sleep mode. Trumpeting male elephants decided to calm down. The entire living beings on the mountains far and wide went into a deep slumber. This is how Kamba describes it. See how beautiful it is. Nature itself embraced slumber, but not Rama. After spending a sleepless night in despair, Kamba's Rama demonstrates human qualities of pangs of separation, but bounces back from that and marches on with Lakshmana towards Rishyamukha Parvata as suggested by Sapari to meet his fellow sufferer like him. Who's that? Who else? Sugriva. Sugriva, who has been deprived of his wife's company due to his own brother Vali, is actually awaiting this moment probably. Only difference is that Rama's wife Sita has been abducted by the demon king Ravana, whereas Sugriva's wife Ruma Devi is detained by his own brother Vali. You know why? Vali actually proclaimed victory over his younger brother, whom he considers as a fraudster who has schemed to usurp his kingdom. It is essential to bring the parallels between Rama and Sugriva for the onward movement of the story, as this unity in suffering has forged a bonding, a very special bond, a bond of friendship, a bond of brotherhood between these two fellow sufferers. And hence, this canto is very significant as it also introduces the most inimitable, valorous Hanuman who has been worshipped by the Hindus until date as Lord Hanuman on par with Rama. The inimitable Hanuman is sent down from Rishyamukha Parvata by Sugriva, who is in mortal fear of Vali, to check on the bow-cladding Rama and Lakshmana. Sugriva wants to investigate if these two divine-looking beings are Vali's spies. And really we cannot blame Sugriva for this. Kambar compares Hanuman to Lord Shiva here, and he elevates our expectations on this great character. As we've already been experiencing Kambar's divine portrayal of Rama in every canto, our expectations are further heightened when we read of his description of Hanuman. Hanuman, who is endowed with divine powers to take any shape he wants, assumes the shape of a young brahmacharya and approaches the celestial pair Rama and Lakshmana. He immediately assesses them to be of a noble born, righteous warriors who follow the path of Dharma. He senses their mental fatigue. Despite this, Kambar says Hanuman asserts mentally that these two noble beings have the power to absolve one of their accumulated sins and send those souls not to the abode of Yama but to everlasting moksha. Here we see the foreshadowing technique used by Kambar to let the readers feel what's going to happen in future maybe. Unconditional love wells up in the heart of Hanuman when he sees these two people. Kambar's introduction and juxtaposition of the characters of Hanuman with the divine pair Rama and Lakshmana set the events in motion for not only for the rest of Kishkinta canto but for the remaining part of Kamba Ramayana itself. When Kamba introduces Hanuman and his meeting with Rama, it's an epic moment that not only reveals the nuances of the juxtaposition of two great personalities, it also reveals the entire cultural backdrop of the milieu during which Kamba has reinvented Ramayana. Kamba's technique of moving the storyline is interestingly done. He uses Lakshmana as the spokesperson for Rama, and Lakshmana narrates the entire life of Rama until the beginning of Kishkinta canto to Hanuman, who is so touched by that it melts his heart like anything, and almost immediately he becomes an ardent devotee of Rama. And now on, it's Hanuman who talks about Rama. It's Hanuman who takes up the job of Lakshmana and introduces both of them to Sugriva when he meets Sugriva with meticulous details. Kishkinta canto is also significant in bringing out the subtleties and parallels in the pairs of relationships that are projected here. Kamba forces the readers to look at the relationship between the monkey brothers Vali and Sugriva as a contrast to the almost divine relationship between the brothers Rama and Bharata. When we see in Kishkinta canto, brother Sugriva, who mistakenly becomes the king due to the pressure from his followers, without realizing that the lawful king Vali is still alive, though trapped in a cave, we are reminded of Bharata, who is actually given the kingdom in a platter. But when Rama goes on exile, still he refuses to accept that kingdom. Bharata goes with a big sea of followers with a determination to bring back Rama from the forest. Kambar is generous in providing us the parallels and contrasts, and it is up to the reader to pick up the value she or he wants to observe. Whether you want to be the Sugriva or Bharata, it's your choice. Kambar does not dictate terms to you. Kambar's Rama treats them equally. That is the beauty of Kamba Ramayana. Once again, it is Maruti who narrates the struggles between Sugriva and Vali to Rama. Sugriva is accepted on par with his own brother by Rama, and he promises to restore Sugriva with his wife Rumadevi and anoint him as king in the place of Vali. Rama, who is the embodiment of love and forgiveness, is probably unable to accept the unforgiving nature of Vali, who treats his own brother Sugriva with vehemence and vengeance. Rama takes an oath of friendship with Sugriva like an oath given to a life partner. Maruti knows the exact words that could forge this friendship, and hence he highlights Sugriva losing his wife Ruma to Vali, which has triggered Rama enough to pledge his support to him. Rama is subtly tested by Sugriva on his valor when Sugriva expresses his desire to Rama that Rama could attempt to pierce the strongest Maramara tree, and Rama, without feeling insulted, gallantly sends his sharp Ramabana through not one or two, but 7 Maramara trees and gets back his arrow into his arrow shaft to an assembled audience who are dumbfounded. Everything that comes in numbers of 7 has felt the impact of this arrow, according to Kamba. I'll elaborate on this particular poetic genius of Kamba based on this particular incident and a verse related to this in my next video, as this particular discourse focuses more on the essence of Kishkinda canto in general, whereas the next will be focusing more on the poetic excellence of Kamba. There's another scene structured by Kamba to highlight on the great valor of Lakshmana. Sugriva describes in detail the valor of Dundubi, the Rakshasa who had capability to create great waves even in Kailasha. Dundubi was directed by Lord Shiva to fight with the Devas, who in turn direct him to challenge Vali instead of them. All these Kamba structures just to project before us the greatness of Vali, not Dundubi. With this kind of a Dundubi, Vali has fought bravely, and he has put an end to Dundubi's life, leaving his carcass on Rishyamukha mountain. Basically, listening to the valor of Vali, Rama gives a hint to Lakshmana to remove that carcass, and Lakshmana triggers that massive carcass by his toe, and it goes in an arc, and that body travels through the 7 worlds and falls back, astounding the Vanaras. Kamba's inimitable excellence in structuring this incident creates a great impact in understanding the valor and character of Lakshmana as well. Sugriva and his associates describe the airbound abduction of Sita in great detail, and they give Rama all the beautiful ornaments of Sita, which brings fresh tears to Rama's eyes. We really cannot read this part without feeling the kind of sympathy and empathy that can develop in a human being's heart towards Rama. After this, their onward march towards Kishkinda begins. Rama is astounded to see their alikeness and struggles to identify Vali, while the monkey brothers are wrestling with each other. Again pacifying Sugriva, Rama sends him for a second round of wrestling with Vali, with a garland around his neck for easy identification. Rama manages to bring down Vali with a single arrow that has been identified by Vali himself with great respect as Ramabana. You see, Vali prides himself as someone who can never be brought down to earth. He always feels that he is very special, which is also true, and probably to elevate Rama's greatness here, Wali identifies in his heart, only Ramabana can bring me down. This must be Ramabana. Though there's the moral dilemma triggered by Rama bringing down Wali hiding behind a tree, the idea of what would Rama do if Wali himself surrenders to Rama halts our fault-finding attitude. When Rama takes a decision to kill Wali, remember it's an autocratic decision in which he does not allow other people to be faulted. It's also a political decision after fulfilling which only he'll be able to acquire an army to search for his abducted wife Sita. The arguments put forth by Wali himself to Rama after being hit by Rama's arrows are beautifully carved by Kambar, who does not bestow a villainous bestiality on Wali. Wali is in awe and admiration of Rama, though he is upset by the stand taken by Rama. Kambar, who has already incarnated Rama in his heart as Lord Rama, grabs every opportunity to project this sensibility. He ensures that even Wali shares the same attitude. Rama has already forged a friendship with Sugriva, which he has honored now by winning back his wife and the kingdom. Probably, Wali's retaining Ruma has justified Rama's stand. Even the dying Wali does not begrudge his brother's luck and blessings that have favored him in the form of Rama. What Rama does here should be viewed from the point of view of a Charanagati Tattva, or otherwise the philosophy of surrender. Rama has vowed to protect whoever surrenders to him, and his standing by Sugriva's side is an extension of it. That's it. Rama specially blesses Angada and instructs him on how to conduct himself in the new kingdom under his uncle Sugriva. He inducts Sugriva with all the instructions he had received from Vasishta before the coronation that was supposed to have taken place for Rama, which never took place. He also encourages the reluctant Maruti to go back to Kishkinta, as Hanuman's heart is with Rama already. After all these positive happenings in the period of Dakshinayana, Sugriva seems to have forgotten his promise to Rama as the indulgence sucks him up and he becomes oblivion to the rest of the world. An angry Lakshmana is sent by Rama to check on the current situation in Kishkinta. Lakshmana is sent as a reminder to Sugriva to fulfill his promise. Rama subtly reminds Sugriva through Lakshmana that the path in which Wali has been sent is still open, and Sugriva should remember the valor of Rama and Lakshmana. To pacify the angry Lakshmana, Prince Angada meets and consults with the Hanuman, and both of them consult Wali's wife, the intelligent Thara. Her widowhood and her simple, sober appearance triggers memories of his widowed mothers in the heart of Lakshmana. And with great difficulty, they manage to pacify Lakshmana. Thara and Hanuman finally assure him that they have already sent messengers and spies all over in every direction to search for Sita and her whereabouts. Finally, Angada manages to drill sense into an intoxicated Sugriva, who sobers up and welcomes Lakshmana. Kamba's portrayal of Lakshmana at Kishkinta touches a raw nerve in our heart. You see, Lakshmana refuses all kinds of formal courtesies showered on him at Kishkinta by Sugriva. He refuses even formal seating and food for the nobles and tells Sugriva in Tamil, you see, Pachilai Kirangu Kai Paraman Nungiye Michile Nugarvadu வேறு தான் ஒன்று நச்சிலேன். Meaning, I will not eat anything that has not been eaten by Rama, and I eat only the leftovers of Rama. Oh my God. What a humble Lakshmana here we see. Lakshmana actually looks up to Rama. Not only as his brother, he looks up to him as if he is his own master. Kambar thrusts us into the irony of these words that are uttered by Lakshmana to Sugriva, who had been instrumental for the death of his own brother, for whatever be the reason. As I told you before, Kishkinda Kanta is full of parallels and contrasts, which actually presents us with ethical lessons throughout. Kambar paints before us the sea of Vanara Sainyam now, another scene, the army of the primates with meticulous details. Some significant warrior chiefs are mentioned by Kambar here. Sathavali, Suseshana, then Ruma's father and Sugriva's father-in-law, Tharan, Hanuman's father, Kesari, Dhumiran, the head of the bear species, Suvachan, Panasan, Neelan, Kavayan, Darimukan, Samban, Dumindan, Dunmukan, Gajagomukan, Kumudan, Kumbhasankar, and Hanuman. These are just a few people, few of the chiefs who have managed to bring an oceanic army of monkeys and bears for Ramakaryam, or for the noble job of searching for Mother Sita. This huge army is divided into four, and Sugriva nominates Hanuman to take a portion of the assembled army and march towards the southern direction where Ravana is presumed to be there. Kamba meticulously shows us the level of confidence Sugriva has in Hanuman and the level of confidence and trust Rama has in Hanuman. You know why? Rama describes Sita in great detail to Hanuman. He shares a few incidents with Hanuman, which if he narrates to Sita, it could instill confidence in her. Rama shares with him the incident where Sita was naive enough to ask Rama, "Have we reached the forest?" the moment they left their fort in the great city of Ayodhya. Kamba has narrated this beautifully, which reminds us of the same naivety demonstrated by Kannaki in Silappadikaram, where she asks Kovalan, "Have we reached Madurai?" the moment they left the city of Pumbugar. These parallels are just for us to enjoy in the form of literary pleasure to see the parallels. Rama parts with his signet ring to Hanuman to show it to Sita as a token from Rama to win her trust. He warns Hanuman not to stray into Agastya's area so that he won't be lost in the sweet honey, the sweet nectar of Tamil language as propagated by Agastya. This part demonstrates Kamba's love for Tamil language despite knowing Sanskrit. The building up of events in Kishkinda Canto is fast paced, and it also amazes us to see how Hanuman has managed to win the confidence of the noble Rama and Lakshmana within a short span of knowing each other. Hanuman and his entourage reach Mahendra mountains after great difficulty. They had been told to come back to meet Rama and Sugriva within a month with good news, but after reaching Mahendra mountains, they have no clue as to where Sita is. Luckily now, Kambar introduces another character, Sambadi. Sambadi is the brother of Jatayu, who fought for Rama in an earlier canto. And Sampadi, the massive eagle, the brother of Jatayu, meets these Vanaras and listens to their narration of Jatayu passing away. And this really melts Sampadi. It touches him. It actually also disturbs him to learn about Rama's trouble. But ironically, the sheer name of Rama, Rama Nama, Rama Japa, rejuvenates him. It allows him to grow back his burnt wings. He provides guidance to all the Vanaras and tells them the exact location of Sita across the sea and flies away. Kambar captures the beauty of Hanuman's character. Hanuman does not understand his own ability. Hanuman always has to be told by someone about his prowess, and he thinks he does not possess the capability to fly over and reach Lanka and meet Sita. Sampadi has told him the exact location already to them. Encouraged by the words of Jambavan, Hanuman grows his stature and climbs on the Mahendra mountain to achieve the magic of the epic. And thus Kambar brings a closure to Kishkinta canto, leaving the Vishwarupa Hanuman on top of the Mahendra mountain. And now I leave you all, leaving you all on the top of Mahendra mountain and wait for his Sundarakanta by whoever narrates it to you. Thank you very much for this golden opportunity to share this with you. Thank you.